Welcome back, teachers. So we're here for one more video on this series about reading and teaching reading, how to teach reading. My peer Bruno, great friend, we're going to be discussing the lesson planning, the listening and the reading cycles, because they're kind of similar, but we're going to focus on reading. Roda a vinheta. But when we're talking about teaching the skills, listening and reading, then we have this cycle. The first part of a reading lesson is what we call pre-reading. So in a pre-reading task, and this is actually one of the principles of a reading lesson that Jeremy Harmer talks about, which is you have to get students involved to the topic, right? So in a pre-reading task, you students are not going to read anything in this stage. We're probably going to try to engage students to the topic of that text. In terms of terminology, there is, I think, Scrivener would call this setting the scene. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you can think of that. But a pre-reading is students are not going to read, they're going to have a conversation. Again, there's another principle from Harmer there, which is that the feeling of the student needs to be connected to this. So when I say engage, I actually mean that the student's supposed to give opinions about that topic. So a good pre-reading task will involve opinions, feelings.
And you can do so by, as you mentioned, asking a question, showing a picture, and asking a question. But I feel that the conversation part is essential, right? You have a short conversation during the beginning of this class. I get the feeling good language classes, they feel like long, structured conversations with moments of input or language analysis here and there, but this is on another topic. So
yeah, and you can't forget that it's a reading lesson, so there are lots of moments in which the energy is kind of low.
Yeah.
Right. So you really have to make the most of that kind of moment in a reading lesson, right? There's one parenthesis there, which is like, what if you're teaching a very, very low level?
Oh, okay.
Right. So if you're teaching like an A1 level, mm-hmm. that conversation has, first you can use you can prompt students with language, but still I think there are ways for you to manage and help students formulate an idea, display some sort of opinion about the topic, right? But there are other options, for example, ranking tasks. There are types of pre-reading activities that you can do even with the lowest of levels.
And as we mentioned in our previous, either previous video or the one before that, pre-teaching language might also be part of the pre-reading phase, in which you teach students vocabulary and really teach them vocabulary in a very explicit manner. So maybe you give them 5 words. Imagine your students are reading a text about, I don't know, nutrition, right? And then the words nutrition, diet, nutrients, metabolism are words that students have to understand so that they can deal with the text. If you feel students don't know those words, you can teach what these words mean before students read the text. So, guys, metabolism. Do you understand this word? Can you say it again? Metabolism. Okay, metabolism. What does this mean? Teacher, I think it's this. Yeah, if that's correct, okay, that's it. Can you say it again? Thiago will say it again. Okay, that's what metabolism means. Next, right? Or if nobody knows, you tell them metabolism is, I'm not going to risk it because, but metabolism is, yeah. Next word. Yeah. So
And make sure you plan the lesson that you have a good definition for that.
yeah. And then you
Yeah.
teach them the words. You give them the words. Pa 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 pa. And let's go. Right. Don't dangle on this.
You see that the pre-teaching vocabulary is all about you doing your homework and reading the text really carefully. So especially if you're like teaching a very high level, right? There are always words that nobody knows everything. Come on.
Yeah.
Right. And then we'll move on to while reading, and then while reading can be split into parts. You have detail and specifics. The specifics would probably come first, right, Bruno? Do you agree with me that specifics is usually? I'll give you a very simple example of specific.
We have gist too, right?
Yes, they're the gist. Yes, of course. Yeah, but I mean, gist will be the first, probably specifics, and then details. Well, first, why while reading? Because these are tasks students will perform as they read the text. Right. So as mentioned in one of the videos, a gist exercise is one that involves the students understanding the main idea, the whole of the text. Right. So when you're able to understand, and by the way, this is very top down, right, Bruno? But they're going to be able to understand the main idea, the basic principle of that text. It could be the writer's intentions or opinion on a matter. It could be something like, does the writer think that this is a good idea, for example? And then, but of course, it cannot be something that is straight, like that is explicitly said in the text, because that would make that not a gist, but a detailed or specific question, right? So it needs to be something that takes understanding of the reading, right, of the text.
That's a very interesting highlight. It takes understanding and not just finding.
I think it's the hardest of them to devise, right? So, and it's so much so that in course books, I think they lack good gist questions.
Yeah, because if it's something that students can find in the text, and find in the text, I mean like circle in the text, underline in the text, right? This is something specific. So you're looking for when does the train leave? You're going to find that in the text, and you're going to circle that in the text.
Yes.
3 reasons why the character left. Took the train and left. This is detail. You're going to find this in the text as well, but it demands a little bit of interpretation. The idea of gist is that you don't find it in the text, but as if you would circle the whole text.
Yeah, and now moving on, when we get to details and specifics, I'm going to give you one example of one task that could be specifics and could be details. Say you give students a true or false exercise. If it is a true or false, in which students will, let's say that there is like the sentence is, this person hates this. And you have to find if that's true or false. And then in the text, it's explicitly said that the person loves it. So you know the sentence is false. That's a bit easy. It's just a false. That's specifics. Specifics is also related to finding numbers, names in the text. Usually kind of there, easy to find. Now, if you get the same true or false exercise and you change that into a sentence that takes a little bit more interpretation, or that you ask students to correct the false sentences, then that's not specifics, that becomes details.
And then in the next video, we're going to discuss why should you care with this difference, right? Because you might be saying, well, but students are interpreting the text, right? So why should I care that this is specific or this is detail? In the next video, we're going to discuss that a bit more, because this difference matters, right? And then
very much.
Yeah, we'll discuss it in the next video. Okay, so Walter, we begin the class with pre-reading, no reading here. We engage students. So we have a little conversation with them, showing a picture, asking a question that demands their opinion on something, right? So that it's more fun. We might pre-teach language. So with students, as we mentioned in the previous videos, if you feel your students need an extra help, pre-teach this language. If you feel that they will be fine just being thrown uh, in the deep end of the pool, facing the text without knowing some words, don't pre-teach. This is not necessary. Then we go on to while reading. Students get the text now and they start reading. They will read for gist first to get the main idea of the text, and then focus on activities that will get them to read for specific information or for details. Students are really reading. In my opinion, and we'll see if you agree with this, Walter, I think this is the key moment of the lesson. Since
Absolutely.
this is a reading class, this is where if your lesson is, I don't know, 45 minutes long, maybe 10 minutes
20,
here, 10 minutes to this other one, and 25 minutes here,
25 there. Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Mhm. And just one thing, I don't mean whatsoever that you have to have the while reading like three types of tests. You could have only two. I'd say that it's pretty weird to just jump into a text without a gist. You it would be advisable, and I recommend, right? But you could do a details or just specifics because you see that the cycle keeps. It's kind of like because the students will read this text three times to do three tests, so it makes sense that the last one will be harder, right? So it will be more challenging. But I completely agree that that's the most important because that's where they're developing the skill, right? And make sure that we are not just correcting answers, right? That's not developing anything. And then finally, we move on to the post reading, final part of the cycle, right? So post reading for me, the basic idea is that students will now discuss what they read, and they will have to say their opinions about it. They say how they feel about it. So they talked about the topic before reading. Then they had a lot of input because they read this text. But do they agree with it? Maybe they don't. So a good agree disagree task would be one good one for you to have in a post reading, right? But it's like the most important thing here is like the bottom line is that it is a speaking task, right? That you're going to get students to communicate about the text and that it is related to the text.
Yeah. And doing something with this newly acquired knowledge. So students should learn something from the text. And here it's really content. So the text is about nutrition, so that there is a goal that the person wrote this text for a reason. So teaching people how to, I don't know, how to accelerate their metabolism, how to be healthy or whatever. So this is the content of the text, and then students should do something with this content that they got. As Walter said, do you agree? Do you disagree? And then have a discussion. Younger students can make posters reacting to the text. They can record a video review of the text. They can record a short podcast commenting and criticizing the text that they read. Whatever you manage to get students to do using the content of the text after reading the text is a post-reading activity. It's positive. Just make sure that students need the text, need to have read the text to do this activity. Because if they don't need the text will feel irrelevant. And then the lesson might feel like, well, teacher, we just spent 20 minutes reading this and no,
You learn nothing from it, right?
yeah,
Like,
and we don't need this,
yes, yes. Like the input is meaningful.
So pre-reading, while reading, post-reading, and as you mentioned, Walter, right at the beginning of the video, that there will be moments where the energy flow is different, right? So you have a moment of low energy at the start
Mhm.
with pre-reading. No, a moment of high energy at the start with pre-reading. Students are
Sure.
talking, students are engaged, they are chatting, they're looking at a picture, asking questions, whatever. And then there's a moment of low energy, which is the while reading moment. And
In a
during the
long
while
one.
reading it's very common for teachers to feel this anxiety of, oh my God, my students are too quiet, they are silent, they're not producing. I'm gonna ask questions while they read. Uh, that's really not necessary. Let students read, deal with the text. If they want to ask you questions, let them ask you questions. But I wouldn't be the one initiating these interactions. Allow them some quiet time to read and then check answers in pairs. You're correct. And then they go to detail, they read again, chill, and
Absolutely.
then check in pairs, check with the teacher, right? But it is supposed to be a moment of quieter. And it's nice on our ears as well. If you're teaching 6 classes, 8 classes, 10 classes a day, having a moment where the classroom is silent is can be a blessing.
And people need time to assimilate things.
Mm-hmm.
They need thinking time. It's like you're reading something in a second language.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, that text is supposed to be level plus, so it's always supposed to have some sort of challenge for the student.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
chances are that there will be effort while reading, right? So you got to give people space.
Yeah. And if you find yourself wanting to interact, sit down. Sit.
And hold your mouth like this, like I
Yes.
do. I physically do this.
Okay, I'm gonna be quiet. Don't speak unless spoken to, right?
The teacher wants to teach. We need to stop teaching so much.
A little bit, yeah. And then you have a moment of high energy, which is the post-reading moment of the lesson. And then the class is going to end in a high energy moment, students interacting, chatting, comparing answers, sharing posters, sharing the videos, sharing podcasts, right? Which is a good way to end a lesson.
And just imagine if that text is something really meaningful to students that gets them engaged to the topic of the lesson. They will really produce in this last post reading. And we cannot forget, right after this stage, you do need a feedback slot so that you give students some feedback based on the production they had in this post reading, right? That's it for the cycle.
Folks, this is a very traditional, but also tried and tested reading cycle. This might take the whole lesson. This might take a section of your lesson, and then you work on some grammar, some vocabulary, some other skill. But I think it's a good idea to keep in mind the 3 steps, so that whenever you're dealing with a text in class, you remember to do a little bit of pre, a little bit of while, a little bit of post, even if your goal is not developing reading skills, but it's an interesting approach to deal with texts in general in class. I'll see you folks in the next video, where we will discuss micro skills, which is getting into a little bit more detail on the while reading section. We talked about details, specifics, and gist, but there are a couple more which are also interesting, and a bit more information on those 3 as well.